Welcome back to Rock Guitar Confidential with Scott and Ryan. Today's episode, the battle between music versus celebrity and image. See who wins next.
These are the Metro. Metro for a podcast. I'm not sure what time signature we're playing. If we do this polyrhythmic, this will be like the most brilliant podcast that's ever happened. We'll do this in we're gonna do like 7, but it's really in 4. If you look at so many measures through,
this podcast was recorded in 7-8 times.
Yes, exactly. But really, if you look at it from stepping back, it's like every 4 measures is really 4. That's where the 1 happens. You know what I mean?
Yes. This podcast was recorded in 1 measure of 4/4, followed by a measure of 3/4.
Polyrhythms, people. Polyrhythms. The only thing better than polyrhythms is corn truck cereal.
Corn truck cereal.
Delicious. Now with minerals and such.
Minerals and such, and 50% less possum.
Exactly.
It's the choice of Toby Keith.
Exactly. That's what makes him strong and whatnot.
Well, actually, Toby Keith isn't strong right now. He's battling cancer.
Yeah, I mean, good luck to him. Actually, that's not a fun thing. Yeah,
sure.
I'm not a fan of his music or his, many things about
or anything about him.
Yeah, but I don't wish ill on anybody.
Yeah,
so.
true. I don't wish ill on him.
So you're saying there are people that you do wish ill on?
Oh yeah,
okay,
sure.
fine.
Why not?
Because you have to sort of put out what is the old quote, be the change that you want to see in the world.
You're right.
Be loving, be understanding, and then just let people learn and on their own pace as they go. You know
Yes,
what I mean?
but I can enjoy a big old helping of Schadenfreude
That's
along
true.
the way.
Well, everyone
to
does.
myself. Everyone does. Yeah.
If you say you never enjoy Schadenfreude,
right, then you're lying.
Exactly. That's like I just
There's 2 constants. Everybody loves Schadenfreude and a big old bowl of corn trucks.
That's true. Well, of course. That
of
speaks for
course.
itself. Now with minerals and whatnot. All right.
Yeah. So welcome back to the podcast, everybody.
Yes,
I hope you.
Rock Guitar Confidential podcast. This isn't just any podcast. This
Right.
is,
It's the Rock Guitar Confidential
with
podcast.
Ryan and Scott, your humble hosts here, and so we have a fun one for you today. We were actually sitting here just chewing the grit. I don't know what we're saying. Chewing the breeze.
Chewing the corn trucks. And
I'm flustered. I didn't have my corn trucks this morning.
Yes.
That's
So today's topic, which has been on my mind a lot lately, music versus celebrity and image.
Yeah, and I think that there's the purist side of you, especially if you're like someone who's in the niche genre, like prog metal like us, or if you're in like jazz fusion or jazz or blues or bluegrass or Americana. You kind of have this like, I'm looking down my nose at celebrities like, oh well, we really are the real thing. You guys are just all image. And what's funny is I think that one of the eras that gets pointed to, I think unfairly, by most people who have that sort of attitude is the 80s. And they look at the 80s and say, oh man, all those hair bands, it's all about the image, look at this, like the, any of the bands. You think
any of the band, yeah.
I mean, anybody like that, it's all about the image, and MTV is undeniable.
The MTV generation, yeah.
But I think that the thing that's different is that really those artists still had the goods musically too, for the most part. There's always a few who didn't, but most of them did.
Right.
So, I mean, what do you think about that?
I just that's kind of where I, sometimes struggle, right? Because I think I can speak for both of us when what I really care about is the music part.
Yeah, I think image definitely has a part to play, though. I mean, part of the reason we love players like Jakey Lee or like Randy or Eddie Van Halen or even Jimi Hendrix for that matter, is because they were the coolest looking dudes you've ever seen too.
Sure. Again, King Diamond. Yeah. There is a stage production involved. Now, I mean, would I like King Diamond as much without that element? Well, I mean, I like that element too. I don't think there's a weak link in what the entire King Diamond product is.
King Diamond's a unique issue because those guys the theatrical part is so intertwined with everything that they do. It's not like but I'll tell you would, because I'm actually completely indifferent to the theatrical part of King Diamond. I love them because they have awesome music.
Right, absolutely. Andy LaRocque musically is my guy.
I could give or take the theatrical part, I'll be honest with you, of anything that they do. That's just, I'm not interested in that part.
If I had to give up a part, this is kind of like when a journalist asked Eddie Van Halen, like, if he had to lose one finger, which one would it be? And he said the pinky on my picking hand.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, if I had to amputate one aspect of King Diamond, it would be the theatrics.
Yeah, but it would still be a rock solid, awesome band even without the theatrics.
Right, because my imagination is better than anything theatrical,
and the music is awesome. It's not like it doesn't need any help. You know what I mean? And I think that if you look at a lot of '80s bands, they get kind of like, even like Bon Jovi, for instance, the band that's got the big kind of giant image, right? Or Whitesnake or Def Leppard. every one of those bands are all great musicians who wrote great songs too.
Yep.
It's not like it's like, oh, this is just BS and they're trying to cover up. There's not. No, they had the goods too.
Right.
Scorpions had the goods too. Van Halen had the goods too. Rush had the goods too.
Yep.
Metallica, when they were first getting big,
when they existed during those first 4
not the
albums before
Metallica.
they were vaporized.
But you know what I
by
mean? Like,
lameness,
go down
yeah.
the list. Even bands that people would see as like, not like that. Winger's a great example of a band that was all substance, even though they got pigeonholed as being all image, and that's just because they're all decent looking dudes, and Kip is like, this,
Well, Kip was on the cover of Playgirl.
yeah, he's like
so
a ludicrously good looking dude.
That was the Kip of death.
Yeah, it was. I mean, if you look like you'd be on like a daytime soap opera, then people are going to hate you, and they're not going to believe that you can also be really talented and hardworking too.
Yeah, I think
which
that was
he
a bad move. I think it was a bad move,
No,
like,
I mean,
ultimately. But
My
who
guess
cares?
is he
I
probably.
mean,
I mean, I don't know Kip, but I'm going to guess he probably just say, "Hey, sure, that sounds cool and interesting. Why not?" You know.
you're right, because he was probably being just a good dude.
Yeah, exactly. And he's like,
Yeah.
"Well, that's kind of cool. I mean, all right, sweet."
Right.
And then I guess that shows a lot of insecurity amongst the other bands too. That I think that's what it comes. I mean, really, everything about Winger, every other band should have been insecure, because like, I guarantee your guitar player isn't as good as that guitar player. I guarantee your singer doesn't look as good or sing or write as good as that guy.
Right, I'm sure
You know?
your rhythm guitar player, keyboard player
Isn't as good as Paul Taylor. And I know your drummer isn't as good as Rob Morgenstein.
Right, yeah, dude, that's the truth.
That's to me. I look at that and I think like, okay, you know, that's a great example. I mean, Whitesnake, same thing. Yeah, they had the big image, but they also had amazing songs. Listen to the 1987 record. Listen to Slide It In. Listen
Yeah.
to Slip of the Tongue. Those are great records.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And you know, Rat, same thing. Rat had the big image. Well, Rat had also like a 5-album streak of writing amazing tunes. They
Yep.
were all incredibly strong. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I look at the hair bands. They got pigeonholed, I think, because later on, some bands that were sort of like maybe only half what those other bands were making it, just because the labels were. It's really more the labels' fault than anybody else's. It's like, anybody who has this
Yep.
hairstyle, anybody that plays these kinds of songs, we're going to sign.
Well, the labels and then MTV, right?
Yeah.
It's, you know, I mean, how many of those bands would, you know, dude, Warrant is a great rock band.
Yeah, Warren has a bunch of albums full of great songs too.
Yeah, and they still make albums full of great songs.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, just like in terms of like a fundamentally sound, great rock band, Warrant has the goods,
Yep.
man.
I mean,
and,
Queensryche,
you know,
you can go down that list of all these other bands and that. So Queensryche had a big MTV presence for a long time. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, Silent Lucidity was a giant video smash. You know what I mean?
Enormous.
That, you know, that doesn't mean the band didn't have the substance. Listen to the music. You know, it's like, to me, it's like it's more of a mirror on the listener and their inability to see the whole picture rather than
Right.
as an indictment of the band, if that makes sense. And then if you look at even at the grunge thing, as much as I despise the grunge thing, you know, you see the exact same thing play out in the grunge world. Like, it started off with a couple of bands who like had a point of view that was a certain
Right.
way, and it was more legitimate. That was really what these guys were. And then by like 4 years in, there's this, okay, let's sign anybody who kind of vaguely looks like Eddie Vedder. You know what I mean?
right, or anybody who smells like Kurt Cobain.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? And then
Smells like Kurt Cobain.
and you
get
end
it?
up having. I did. That was clever. Very
Yes,
clever.
but just in case anyone was wondering, that's a bad smelling smell. Okay, like you wouldn't want to smell it.
It's so funny. I actually had one of my students the other day talk to me about Kurt Cobain. I told him, like, I despise him with the burning hatred of 1,000 suns.
Yeah, so like, yeah, of course.
And they
any
looked at me like, I don't
self-respecting-
understand. I'm like, well, because he's the person most directly responsible for the death of rock music. So
Yeah, I just keep it short and sweet. He was bad at music.
he's the Miles Eric Dyson of the
Terminator reference.
of the grunge world. You know what I mean? Because of him, Skynet rose. You know what I mean? It's
right.
yeah.
GrungeNet.
yeah.
Ooh, that's a new one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. So, you know, yeah. So, like, on, you know, even though that was a movement that was all about being real. And
Yeah,
pretty and-
initially, but then it immediately became a fashion movement.
well, right. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
flannel.
Yeah, exactly. Flannel. Don't have your hair combed. You know, don't look like you just woke up. Basically, you
Right.
know,
Like,
and-
bathing's off limits.
Yeah, exactly. For a good 5-year period, it was like that. You know what I mean?
right,
And then
so
it became
it's-
like how many
yeah.
piercings can you wedge into your face, and how much like weird pink hair and
Ooh,
mohawks. could you
tribal
have.
tattoos.
But yeah, exactly. That was the next move. And it was like the bro, like, yeah, I don't like you very much.
Right. So I think what everyone needs to realize is that
You know.
the image part has always been there to the same degree.
Yeah. If you look at even going back to the 60s, like, you tell me that the Beatles' image didn't have something to do with them
Of
blowing
course.
up the way they did? I mean,
Elvis's image.
yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, it's a marriage of those two things, but that doesn't mean the Beatles didn't have the goods, and that didn't mean Elvis didn't have the goods. It didn't
Right.
mean the Fleetwood Mac. A huge part of why those guys blew up on the Rumors album was the image. Like, whoa, these chicks and these dudes are like all these hippies, and there's like
Yeah.
this weird like love thing happening between them all. And
Dude,
it's like,
Led Zeppelin,
Yeah.
Zoso, like
Yeah.
those aren't even real occult symbols. They just made them up
Yeah.
for the guys in Led Zeppelin.
exactly. But I mean, that image was a huge part of it. You know,
Right, and then remember when
dude, schoolboy outfit for the Angus Young. You
Dude,
know what I
remember
mean?
Spinal Tap with Stonehenge,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then they
yeah.
did the Signs of the Zodiac.
exactly.
Here's your crab face.
But all these artists that are like Hendrix, especially. I mean, to me, Hendrix is probably the greatest icon of the '60s. If you like think about the '60s, think about Woodstock. The first thing I think of is Jimi Hendrix. You know, like
Yeah.
you know, that's like the image you picture in your head. Him playing the Star Spangled Banner.
yeah,
you know?
setting his guitar on fire.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean his music didn't have the goods too. I think
Right.
the thing that's happened over time is that as music's become more and more corporatized, it's become just a can of Pepsi to be marketed. And then whether that anything the can's any good or not, it really almost is like not even a second or third thought. It's just like whatever we can put out there. You know what I mean?
Right. So basically, image has always been, just about, it has been almost equally as important. I mean, we'll still give MTV some due for making it more important.
Yes, but what you
Right.
have to say has always been more important in the past. But I think what's interesting now is that there's, to my mind, the cream is still rising to the top. Though, if you look at like probably the biggest artist in the world right now, it's easily Taylor Swift. Easily.
Go Taylor Swift.
Yeah, exactly. But she's another person who's got the image, who's got like a whole generation of girls. She's like a superhero to them.
And I love that, man. And she plays a guitar.
And
or
she's got
did.
the goods. She can
Yeah.
write and play. She plays piano and guitar. She writes
Yep.
her own songs. She's a great performer.
Yeah.
Her
Seems
songs
like a decent person.
I got easily a couple albums worth of Taylor Swift songs I think are actually great songs, like
Yeah.
well written, really good songs. So she's one of these people I think that is not living on just the image. The image is almost a byproduct of her quality of what she does and her hard work. She's worked her ass off for
like if it's possible to be an honorary Swiftie without like actively really listening to her music,
I do. I
then
think
I
her
would
stuff's-
totally be a Swiftie.
I think her stuff's great.
Yep.
I mean, I haven't heard too many. There's like 2 or 3 songs I can think of that she's ever done that I remember thinking this is terrible. Whose idea was this?
Yeah, like I never hate teaching someone to play a Taylor Swift
Yeah,
song.
because there's chord changes and strumming and instruments being played.
Well, and she can sing.
Yeah,
like,
she
there's
can sing,
not
and there's thoughtful lyrics. They aren't just like dumb, like "ooh, let's go to the club" lyrics. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. You know?
right, or it's not like there's no yarling.
Yeah, of course.
And
But you know,
Jeremy committed suicide.
What's funny though, there's a few other
Brr.
artists that are kind of coming up in the wake of her that I think are pretty good artists, but they still aren't as good as her. You know, in terms of the consistency and quality. Like I look at Phoebe Bridgers, I think Gracie Abrams. There's a few people like that who are solid, songwriters, and there's a handful of really good songs from both those artists. That I
And you
like.
know what's great about Taylor Swift is the positivity of it all, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So one thing that was great about the '80s bands, not to mention that, two things. I'll try and.
There's
like,
only
keep
2 good
these.
things about the '80s bands.
I
think
mean,
we could
there's
go here all
only
day.
good things about the '80s bands,
Yeah.
but. Well, I'll get to the Ricky Rocket interview. I'll put a pin in that.
Okay.
So dude, it's positivity, man. Like these are fraught times.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Right?
dude,
Everyone
I
has a
don't-
lot of anxiety.
I gotta be honest with you. I think every time that ever human beings have lived has been fraught times. I don't think there's anything more or less fraught about our times now than it's ever been. You know?
Well,
what
I mean, maybe in actuality,
yeah.
but I
If
mean,
you
I
take
think
if you take a 30,000-foot view of it, like it's just the same as it's always been. You know what I mean? I don't know that it's more fraught than it was in the '60s or the '50s or in the 1850s. I think the 1860s were pretty fraught.
no. Well, yeah, the dark. Yeah, well, I mean, when everybody when anyone says that the world is coming to an end, think about the Dark Ages.
Yeah. Well, think about
It was worse then.
Think about what happened when Greece fell. You know what I mean? That was
Right.
the light of humanity. Oh, now it's going to be extinguished. But no, it wasn't, because it turns out the Ottoman Empire was actually pretty thoughtful, too.
Well,
You know?
I will just say that I think there are some cultural parallels between what was going on in the '80s and what is going on, right now.
Not musically, though.
Not musically,
yeah.
but I think in terms of what people are experiencing and some things that are happening socially and politically, and I'll just leave it at that.
I feel like we're at the turning of a corner right now in terms of cultural. I think we're moving into the next phase of how culture is going to be.
Well, we're
Yeah.
moving into our robot overlords, and,
Well,
and
eventually.
AI is going to
Eventually
eliminate
that will
every
happen,
single
yeah.
person's job.
Yeah, well, that's true. Well, that's why universal basic income is going to become a thing, and it's either that or we'll live through a few Mad Max decades before we get to that.
Ooh,
you know?
well, dude, if we could, if anyone's seen Loudness's video for This Lonely Heart,
Mm-hmm.
where there's like a group of like Mad Max refugees like marching through the desert, right?
Of
Just like
course.
in Mad Max.
Yeah.
And they stumble upon Loudness, just rocking out on a stage out in the middle of the
which is
the
what
post-apocalyptic
they're known
desert.
to do. That's what Loudness does. They rock wherever they are,
as Loudness does, right? So I mean, I'm looking forward to a post-apocalyptic period where we can just find, just awesome rock bands just rocking out in the desert or in the wasteland.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm looking forward to that.
They're walking through and they're thinking, you know what? I need to let it go, man.
Yes,
because this is going to be a crazy night. That's what they're thinking.
Dude, MZA, which doesn't stand for anything. Actually, did you know that MZA doesn't mean anything?
I think there's some clouds over there. Is that lightning going to strike next?
No, that's thunder in the east.
Oh, okay.
That's thunder in the east. That's thunder in the east.
But you know what?
Yes.
I think that you're right. I mean, in any period, going back to the music cultural part of this, in every period of music, there's been great and bad music. No matter when, even in the 50s, in the 60s, any period, there's been great music and there's been terrible music. That being said, I feel like the propensity has always been, especially pre the corporatization of music, it was way more towards the quality side. That's why people revere the music of the 60s and the 70s so much. And then in the 80s, once the corporations got in the music thing, I think that's where a lot of people who are inherently distrustful of corporate interests started hating what they saw as the corporate 80s bands.
Right. Well,
kind of thing.
and you know what? The 80s bands, they were bands like Twisted Sister, they were rebelling against the man, whether it was the PMRC and government or the corpo.
I think
state.
people were they had an idea about how much they didn't like corporate being in music, and they saw these bands as something they can kind of rage against, saying well, this is just some corporate marketing crap. The bands themselves were just bands who fought and clawed and got themselves their shot. And Twisted Sister's a great Quiet Riot's like that. It was bands that just clawed and clawed and clawed.
Right.
Did not have success right away. Kind of eventually found a way to get a couple big hits and then get their shot. And I think that. Corporate owning music is the same issue of corporate owning, literature, corporate owning television and movies. It's
right.
There's these balances that have to be made between creative people and suits, to decide how to make it happen. But there's no going back. I mean, you can always do an independent thing, and that's fine. But your reach is always going to be massively limited in terms of you just don't have the resources,
right?
You know what I mean? To make that
Payola.
happen. Yeah, so not only that, but just to pay for the marketing and the consistent marketing over time that it takes for something to become successful.
Yep.
People think, oh, the Beatles were just great; they just exploded like Aphrodite out of Zeus's head, or something. That's not at how it worked. Those guys had to fight and play covers in clubs for decades, and then eventually got some radio, and it started growing. And then over time,
didn't the band Man of War explode out of the head of a Titan?
That's they say
that's part of some of their album.
I think
covers.
that's part of their band bio on Wikipedia.
Oh yeah, okay.
But that just isn't how it works. Even all the greatest bands ever, no one just explodes. But nowadays, you had this kind of thing where there's this this mix between. There's this group of music artists who are really kind of more actress model / music artist. Like Rihanna, kind of mogul. They have perfume and clothing lines. And
right. The goal
like
is to become a business mogul.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's probably more in the rap and hip hop.
That
world.
makes sense because there's no money in music.
Right.
So you're not going to be able to make it exceedingly rich making music, no matter how successful you are. As no one buys music anymore. You're going to have to, even if you sell billions of streams, cool, that's a few $1,000s.
Yeah. So what Ricky Rocket was talking about in this interview that I just read. He was basically saying the reason that some people think rock is dead is that rock doesn't stand for anything anymore.
Well, I guess the argument I would put against that is, what did rock stand for before?
Rock and roll's always been the language of rebellion, right?
Yeah, I agree.
It's typically rebelled against more conservative social forces.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's why Elvis was such a big deal back in the day.
Right.
Oh my God, he's gyrating his hips. That is not to be seen. And the girl's like, oh my God, what's this? I'm supposed to be seeing.
Right, and then the parents get scared.
Yeah.
And then it felt dangerous.
Yeah,
right.
It's the same reason a lot of the electric blues artists started getting popular with white kids in the suburbs back in the day, and that was also seen as dangerous for cultural reasons too.
Right.
You know what I mean? Same reason that people in the '90s started having problems with their white suburban kids listening to Eazy-E and stuff like that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So rock's not dead. There aren't any parents of 11, 12, 13 teenage kids out there that are afraid of rock.
No, because they grew up listening to rock.
Right.
Them and their grandparents listen to rock. So it's funny that I remember thinking that when I was getting ready to have kids too. Okay, I grew up listening to Whitesnake and Megadeth and Ozzy and stuff like that, and like, what are my kids going to listen to? It's going to freak me out. You know what I mean? It's like, it's like, I've listened to the King Diamond and Merciful Fate and Slayer.
Yeah, dude, I remember parents being freaked out. Well, we lived through the Satanic Panic.
But that being said, what is my kids going to do to freak? What turns out what they're going to do, they're going to listen to this completely brain dead nonsense. You know what I mean? And it's like,
it's such a letdown.
Yeah, it's like, so it's just a bunch of random nonsense. You know, it's like, when I listen to, I try and listen to like something like Cardi B or something like that, and it's so it's like so intellectual. I mean, not that I try, but every once in a while, I'll just like, what is this Cardi B? I mean, what is this? I'm just gonna check it out.
What is this? And maybe I should try Cardi A.
Exactly. I know. Maybe Cardi C is better.
Maybe Cardi C. Yes, just maybe you chose the wrong Cardi.
Yeah, but it's like so horrible. And then I keep wondering what I'm missing because I'll hear someone talking about, oh my God, I can't miss my Cardi B thing. I'm like, what? This is not like the worst thing you've ever heard in your life. It's
man. I don't. I just don't understand. And I mean, again,
Cardi B is like a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy of Nicki Minaj. Thank you for listening to the Rock Guitar Confidential podcast with Brian and Scott. Please make sure to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast. Now back to the show.
Right, who is now a character skin in Call of Duty.
Exactly. That's probably the best use for that.
Right.
Possibly. I look at that and I think like, does no one give a crap that the music is terrible? And then I look at like I remember being mind blown, like where are all these pop princesses coming from? Where's the Demi Lovato's and the all these like people who are like Selena Gomez, and I come to find out that they actually are all ex Disney stars who are like on the Disney Channel.
There's always been that. It's like where Britney Spears came from.
I know, exactly. And I'm like, where are all these like pop
Aguilera,
princesses coming from?
I mean, Disney, dude. The same people who own Star Wars.
But I look at that and I go like, well, that is so weird. It's almost like this weird conveyor belt of like these chicks that they like wait till they become of age and then they become like sexy pop stars.
Oh, so it's kind of like the former Soviet Union raising figure skaters.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you know what I mean? Like they pick them out when they're like
so weird.
5 years old, and then
all right,
that's
honey,
all
you're of age
train.
now, so it's time to put on this halter top and go dance. It's like we're gonna bring some songwriters in to write some sexy songs.
Well, it used to be okay. Well, we're taking you to the mall.
Yeah, exactly.
And you'll perform at the mall with Tiffany and Britney Spears. But there's no mall now.
It's so gross and weird. It's like I can remember thinking like, where are these people coming from? Like it seems like every day there's a Carly Rae Jepsen.
So,
or there's, it's like where is this factory they're being produced and they're just popping out fully formed? These,
man.
But it turns out the factory is the Disney Channel. Like Miley Cyrus, same thing.
I told you Disney was evil.
Well, I mean, there's parts of Disney that are evil. I'll give you that.
Right, like the Star Wars branch.
No.
And the same, the same people that made the Pop Princess.
I will stand and deliver and fight.
Stupid Baby Yoda.
That's stupid. Whatever. Okay, we're going to move past that because it's going to be ugly.
Just wait till Baby Princess Leia becomes a pop princess, and then
they put her in her pleather outfit, make her dance and stuff.
Right. Once the world realizes that poor little girl cannot act, then she'll have to be a pop princess, and then 20 years from now, we'll be watching like the true Hollywood story of stupid baby Princess Leia.
But you know what's amazing?
I hope not for her sake.
I tell you this, when I look at like something like a Selena Gomez or a Demi Lovato song, I look at I've actually seen this in one of the stores I teach. There's like the pop hits of the whatever 2010s, whatever,
right.
And look at there's like 8 songwriters on this song that has 3 chords.
Well, it's because there's samples on it.
I guess that's true, but it's like really stupid. Like it took 8 people's minds together to make this.
It's because there's samples.
This
that's
2.5 minutes of the same 3 chords is like something that took us. Let's bring us a think tank together. Let's really work on this, guys. It's like
right. Well, so then points for Taylor Swift for writing songs.
All the more impressive,
right?
And her songs are way better, and she did it herself. You know what I mean? It's like or with a couple collaborators. You know what I mean?
Or like a producer.
I look at another artist like a guy like John Mayer. And I keep thinking like he gets that same sort of like he's like the Playboy Lothario guy. I'm like, well, that may be who he is, but he's also really talented.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not like he doesn't have the goods too.
Dude, John Mayer is a guy that I don't want to like, but I have to respect him, man.
He seems like a good dude too.
He probably is.
I can hang out with him and he'd be
Yep.
fine. You know what I mean? I would never let my wife or girlfriend around him. Not in a million years.
Dude, fuck no.
Because that guy's not up above board in that way.
he's got the Gene Simmons in him.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of Taylor Swift, that's another one on the right there.
Oh wait, did Taylor Swift date John Mayer?
Dude, she did a song with him called "Half of My Heart," where she actually sang, and then there was dating around that. She was like 19 at the time. I mean, he was only like 30. But it's like, but he was still, she wrote the song Dear John about him. You've heard about this. She's famous for writing her breakup songs.
I know the breakup songs, but I don't really.
Dear John is about John Mayer. That's basically, how he kind of, sweet talked her, and she thought he loved her and stuff. And
That was off of her album Mayor Hater.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
The mayor of Johntown. No,
The mayor of Breakup Town. Yeah.
but I mean, there's another one right there, like just
So-
tying that together. But he's, the artist who probably is seen as an image person. But that being said, he's got the goods. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So what we need is a rock band to rise up that offends a whole bunch of people but can play their asses off.
I think Steel Panther might be that band.
I mean, Steel Panther might be, man. I mean,
That's
at
the
least
type
they
of
were-
band that's like completely going against the grain of everything else that that's going on. They're not culturally like with the times. if that
I
makes
love
sense.
it. I mean, they're
Yeah.
very much not politically correct whatsoever, and it's satire.
But at the same time, they also do kind of speak towards a sort of indifference to being told what's okay and what isn't, which I really appreciate. Which to me is very rock and roll.
well, I mean,
Yeah.
those guys all come from the '80s.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Like every guy in that band.
Yeah.
And I mean, dude, musically, they're untouchable.
Oh, they're so, and even the songs, as ridiculous as they are fantastic. They're
Right.
so good. I mean,
talk about like a great example of we can write a song about silly and fun stuff, but like everybody's an elite.
yeah,
elite
and it
musician
shows in
that
the
band.
songs too. It's they're all amazing. If you
yeah.
changed the lyrics and made them something that wasn't goofy and ridiculous, it would still be a great song.
So, I haven't done the post-mortem on the America's Got Talent thing, but how the hell did they not go all the way?
Well, I don't understand why they're on that show in the first place. This is a band that signed with Universal Music, and they've been touring for like 10 years. 15 years.
Right. I mean, just to raise awareness.
I
Which
guess
good
so,
on
but,
them.
But that means that's kind of it's not really what that show's about. It's not a metal show. That's very far the outlier on that. What's funny is that when you look at like mainstream people, which is, it sounds weird to say it that way, but like you kind of realize that metal is this weird sort of like anachronism in their mind. It's like this weird thing that used to be big and they don't understand it. It's kind of
I don't think metal
it's a curiosity,
I don't think metal scares any parents anymore.
Well, metal got ridiculous. That's partially why. Like
Yeah.
when it got to the Cookie Monster screaming about like death and bloody, blood hit the floor and all this stuff, and then it became like the
Cannibal Corpse is great, man.
No, I'm not saying that those guys. I'm aiming more at Drowning Pool, that kind of thing. Or
Oh,
it's like,
okay.
Let the bodies hit the floor, that kind of thing. They're getting so stupid, bro metal. It's so bro stupid.
Well, again, there's a lot of metal that appeals to more conservative social
But
forces.
that being said, I can tell you right now that I've been in a lot of social situations with people who are educated musicians, or educated people, like with people with advanced degrees and stuff, where we're hanging out and we're talking and stuff, and everything's going great, and then the topic of music comes around. And like who's I'm like Van Halen, Ozzy Osbourne, and they more than look at me like what? I'm like going, well, yeah, it's great music, dude, and it's it's not what you're listening to is what you think is going to give you cultural currency. It depends on, whereas I'm listening to is what's got killer music. I don't care, and I don't care what you think, which by the way is very rock and roll.
Yeah, bingo, man.
You know what I mean?
Dude, it's very liberating to just like whatever you like and not give it to
well,
anyone
you have the
else
power to do it
thinks.
whenever you want. You can decide what you like or don't like. You just have to decide whether or not you give a shit what anyone else thinks.
Or to like something that other people will give you shit for.
Well,
liking.
look at this. We're metal guys
it's
talking
different.
up Taylor Swift and how great she is.
Yeah.
That doesn't give us cultural currency in our own world. You know what I mean?
Right.
And the stuff that we love, and then we say, yeah, Taylor Swift's great, but you know who else is great? Loudness is also great. You know what I mean? And,
I'll tell you what. Our good friend Alex Bosson from Lunar and Helion Prime
and Ex Aegis too.
and Ex Aegis, right, did all the drum work on our album. I'll tell you, when we were working in the same music store together, man, Alex will bump some Backstreet Boys.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
But you know what? Good on him, because I would give him shit about the boy band stuff that I had to listen to.
Yeah. Well, you know what?
And he doesn't care, and I respect that.
I think what's funny about that too is that you and I are old enough that we've seen like 2 or 3 iterations before Backstreet Boys. Like we saw New Kids on the Block.
Oh, New Kids on the Block were so
we saw
terrible,
Hanson
dude.
and stuff. You know what I mean? It's like we kind of already seen a couple of boy bands before that. You know what I mean? Jonas Brothers is the new Hanson. I think what's funny, that's why I think I might have mentioned this on the podcast before, but that's why marketers only care about 18 to 35. Because once you've reached over 35, you've seen some of this nonsense come around like 2 or 3 times at that point, and you can't get fooled again.
We won't be fooled again. The Who tried to.
Well, the old quote, like, fool me, shame on you. Fool me, won't get fooled again.
Yeah. That's the most presidential thing I've ever heard. Oh, my God.
But, like, we've seen those bands come through a few times. Oh, yeah, Jonas Brothers, that was the same thing as Hanson, except for now they aren't blonde kids, they're kids with brown hair, but it's the same thing.
And you know what really
One
drives...
Direction is the same thing as NSYNC, but, it's
and you know what really kills me about all that is that it's a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of what Motown artists were doing, right?
Well, the difference is Motown artists actually had real bands and wrote real songs and could all sing and perform.
Think about like the Tops or something, right? Like the
Four Tops.
choreo of the Four
But
Tops.
the Four Tops were legit, man. I mean,
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah,
like the boy band stuff is just like some corpo guy saying, "How can we make this appeal to white
it's
people?"
put together by headshots. It's like, okay, we need a guy
Right.
with brown hair that's kind of curly, kind of looks like he's dreamy or something.
Like
you know?
like New Edition was kind of like the first iteration of the '80s wave of boy bands.
Boys to Men's another one like that.
Right,
yeah,
but they put together New Kids on the Block so that white kids would listen to it.
yeah, that's true.
Which is horrible.
Yeah, I know. I agree with you. I mean, I didn't think New Edition or Boys to Men were that great either. To be honest with you, but
No, I mean it
but I
wasn't.
thought
It wasn't
Janet
my
Jackson
thing.
was awesome. And I liked Mariah Carey.
Oh,
you know what I
dude,
mean?
Black Cat by Janet
Oh,
Jackson.
yeah. I like
dude,
that stuff. And I thought
ripping song.
Lionel Richie and the Commodores were rad. I love that band. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
dude,
Yeah.
I just turned a student onto Con Funk Shun.
Oh, dude.
I know I've mentioned them on this podcast before, but they're the writers of the greatest lyric in all of music history, man. Like, no one's ever going to top it, right?
Yeah.
On
You
their
want to
song,
share it with the audience?
yes, well, their song "Got to Be Enough," right? When
Yeah.
he sings, "Got to be enough, girl," and then the backing band goes, "Think about it," and then he sings the greatest lyric of all time. I want to be your stuff, girl. Think about it. I want to be your stuff.
I want
Can
to
you
be
imagine?
like
Dude.
your sack that's hastily put together with like your toiletries and your like underwear and stuff. That's
Ah,
what he
dude,
wants
the
to
stuff
be.
could be anything.
Where's my stuff? Like
I
my
lo-
Grubhub just came. Where's my stuff?
Remember that? Remember that '80s horror movie called The Stuff about like the murderous like
Stuff?
alien Frogurt?
I don't remember.
Oh, it was so I mean there could be that stuff. I don't
Sure.
know, but I mean, can you just imagine like in the '70s just walking up to a woman and that's like
I
can
want to be
imagine
your stuff, girl.
Yeah, that sounds like
was the greatest
something
pickup line ever in the '70s.
Dude, that sounds like something Ron Burgundy would say. I want to be your stuff,
because
girl.
I'm kind of a big deal. you know?
Think about it. Yeah, dude, I know. So everybody needs to go check
Well,
out.
that's the
Con
thing,
Funk
and this is
Shun.
what we're talking about. There is no clear distinct line between image good, image bad. It's like there's bands that have big images and are actually really great, and there's bands and artists that have no image and are really great, and there's bands that have the great image and are terrible, and there's bands that have no image and are also terrible. There's really no through line. It just depends on the artist. You know what I mean?
And folks, that's a perfect example of Venn diagrams.
There you go. Exactly. And
All right,
it's
well,
gonna
there's the
it's going to declare. I mean, like, there's no way to know. Like, the idea that there's some people who literally say this band's all image. It's like, well, if you listen to the music, well, no. Well, then there you have no opinion then. You know,
Right.
it's like, that's why I was listening, like, what's this Cardi B? I don't have interest in it, but I've heard about this. Let me see what this is. And then, oh, it's unbelievably terrible. But, you know, you have to go check it out. You can't just, like, make an opinion by looking at what that band is. If I showed a picture of the band, like, South Gang from the late 80s, they would probably hate them if they're of a certain kind of, without
Right.
hearing a note of what they play.
right, or like Bangalore Choir.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Or in the 90s, if you show a picture of like Temple of the Dog, you'd be like, oh, this band's going to be great. Like, if you're a certain kind of person.
Ugh.
You know what I mean? It's like, but that's what I mean. Like, you can't tell anything from the image. The image may or may not
No.
be
You know what?
indicative of the
Dude,
quality.
you know who was a great rock band who did the image thing? Britney Fox.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Well, Heart is another one that ended up getting kind of ripped apart for the image part, but
yeah.
they became undeniably successful. And once they had that image, it was so.
I mean, they were already successful,
Yeah.
but then even more
Well,
successful.
they were able to kind of rebrand themselves for the 80s because they were a band from the 70s. They were kind of getting looked at like oh, there's this hippie girl band, and then they came out with their big like the Heart and Bad Animals and stuff.
Dude, Little
And-
Queen is so
Yeah.
good.
But they came out with all these records that were very much of the 80s. I think Journey did the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
They didn't become pigeonholed as the 70s band. They became really full. Van Halen fully embraced the 80s.
Yep.
You know what I mean? That kind of thing. I think that's kind of what you had to do. It was smart, but that didn't mean their songs weren't great still. Their songs were awesome.
Like, killer
Yeah.
and well sung and well
And
performed.
Britney Fox is another band that's you can't just look at the image. Cinderella too, you can throw them in that thing. That's
Right,
like
kind
oh,
of the
Cinderella
same.
is just all image. It's like well, they've got the typical image you would have in the mid '80s.
Yeah, there was a certain name for that too, like Baroque, or there was a certain kind of glam that they were doing.
Yeah. It kind of I think it was built off like the Hanoi Rocks principles, sort of, wasn't it? Like kind of in that.
I think Hanoi Rock. Like I'm thinking more like the 19th century like ruffles and
Yeah, I know what
shit.
you're talking about. Yeah, that was the thing.
Like Hanoi Rocks was more kind of like
Yeah, kind of
sleaze
were they
and
okay?
glam. Yeah.
That's a band I remember like seeing pictures of them, but everything I've heard from Hanoi Rocks, I've not been into.
You know what? So every year for my students, I try to pick a Christmas song.
Okay.
Right, and like I just had a student ask me about that, and I responded, look, I mean, Halloween hasn't happened. we need to focus on Halloween and give
then
it
Christmas
its
is
due.
wait,
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. And
We have to
even
decide which 3 King Diamond songs we're going to learn for the next
for
month.
Christmas,
Yeah.
right?
No,
So,
for Halloween. Christmas is going to be, are you going to call it King Diamond for Christmas? That's cool.
yeah, well, I mean, it had like no presents for Christmas.
You could get like ironic and do
Right.
Halloween for Christmas.
like
But-
Satan needs a helping hand, like no presents for Christmas. So I know I've done that for Christmas. I also usually trot out Christmas with the Devil by Spinal Tap. That's always a big hit every Christmas
There you go.
season.
Yeah.
Because I have to find something
Especially
that
the little ones.
because I have to find something I don't hate, right? And I mean, just for everybody out there, Christmas is not my favorite holiday.
That's true. Yeah.
My Christmas tradition is watching The Exorcist on Christmas with a bottle of whiskey.
Hey, okay, the sidebar. What do you think about the new Exorcist Believer thing?
Oh, I can't wait! They're gonna put the OG in Exorcist in theaters. The
Oh, yeah, you
the
told me that.
extended
Yeah.
director's cut with like the
Yeah.
spider walk scene and stuff with some extra goodies. So yeah, man, I'll be in theaters twice
To watch
to watch some Exorcist.
some Exorcist possession horror.
The only downside is that that's gonna kind of mess up my Christmas plans.
Oh well, I mean,
I could watch The Exorcist again.
you got to do what
on
you got to do.
Christmas.
Though, you know what I mean? It's
It is the greatest movie of all time, hands down.
Well, I mean,
you know,
probably
so.
there's this movie called Star Wars. You should probably check that out.
Pass.
Uh,
Original trilogy Star Wars is okay because there's no children in it.
How about Raiders of
it's
the Lost
fine.
Ark, man?
Oh no, it was cool. I mean, I do Temple of Doom with like the heart scene,
about,
human sacrifice,
Fellowship of the
eating
Ring?
the bugs.
Fellowship of the Ring?
Oh yeah, Lord of the Rings is great.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Yeah.
that's another pretty damn good movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, dude, there's only stupid little kids in it. Like at the very end, when Samwise and his kids are it's all over, and we got to the end.
I
So.
love your anti-child agenda. It's funny.
I just, dude, when I was a child, I don't remember being stupid, and I didn't want to see kids my age and stuff. I wanted someone to look
So you
up
weren't
to.
into like Goonies or anything like that? Like Goonies?
Well,
was
the kids in the Goonies were older than me.
Yeah, a couple
when
years, but I mean that was
you
like,
know,
but they're still kids. It wasn't like they're adults. You
and
know
I
what
mean, come on, don't we all still look up to Corey Feldman?
No, I never in my life have ever thought
Dude, we could devote a whole episode of
of
this
the
podcast.
two Corys, he's the least talented of the two. Unfortunately, it's
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
considering the other Corey's dead,
yeah.
then I'd
exactly.
say,
but
yeah.
even when
I
he was
mean-
living,
Oh, okay. You're changing the parameters now.
I was not a fan of either of the Corys. I'll be honest with you.
Oh
but-
man, we just went on a tangent. Where was I going with all that before we got into the Christmas song? So
Okay.
this year's Christmas song will be "Dead by Christmas" by Hanoi Rocks.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
That's a band I've heard a lot about, but and what I've listened to from them, I've always kind of felt was underwhelming. I was like, I kind of wish it was cooler or had more to it. You know what I mean?
It's very more like
it's like Britpop sort of thing, right?
Britpop sleaze glam.
Yeah.
It definitely owes more to like 70s glam.
Yeah, like kind of Mick Ronson sort of guitar styles and stuff like that.
I mean,
yeah.
it's what
like
it's what
Ziggy Stardust or Bowie kind of stuff.
I mean. They were Poison before Poison.
I guess so.
You know,
but
maybe-
Poison is like a little heavier, a little bit more rockin'. You know
Well,
what
sure.
I
I mean, their sound
Yeah.
was evolved a little bit, but I mean, definitely, there's like a lineage there. There's a connection. If Vince Neil hadn't murdered the drummer from Hanoi Rocks, I wonder if things would have been different.
Yeah, it's
But-
true. I'm surprised that band didn't like rebrand and do like a metal record in the '80s. You know what I mean?
Plus, it was just a drummer. You could have replaced him.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it shouldn't. that
As
never
long as
derailed
Michael
the
Monroe's
band,
still
yeah.
there, right? That's all that matters, right?
Right.
But I don't know. It's weird. I think I don't know the image thing. I've struggled with myself as an artist too because I kind of don't want to be inauthentic. And I don't want to jump in on like a trend, like, oh, this is the cool thing, so I should go get tattoos now and get nose rings because that's the cool thing, or I should go figure out how to do makeup or get a mohawk or whatever, just some stupid ass
Get
thing.
my spine
Yeah,
pierced.
exactly. That's just not me. You know what I mean? And I guess you could argue that okay, if you try to just be a regular dude, then that's not really an image, but that is your choice. It's like the Rush line: if you choose
Yeah.
not to decide, you still have made a choice.
Well, for those out there who are listening to our most recent album release, our Ex Aegis.
Yep.
Yes, that's right. So the photo, everyone's black and white except for the instruments.
Yeah, exactly.
And those shine out, right?
That's
So
true.
I think that's an authentic way to express ourselves.
Yeah, it's about
you
the
know?
music. It's not really about anything else. I think
Right.
the rest of it's sort of secondary. You know what
Yep.
I mean? And I think all my favorite artists, as much as they might have image going on, I don't know that was the primary thing. You know what I mean? Especially if you look at like a band like Van Halen. Like back in the day, yeah, they had a picture on the album cover, but it wasn't like you knew much about that band. Their music spoke for itself. Zeppelin, same thing. anything. It was,
Yeah.
you didn't really know. You saw a picture somewhere maybe on the inside or.
Dude, remember like getting an album and looking at the band photo, or seeing like a photo of a band in like Rip magazine or something,
Yeah.
and then wondering which one of these people is the guitar player.
Yeah. Well, sometimes they'll be lucky they'd actually have the guitar in their hand. You could just say, "Oh, that's the guitar player."
Right, but like if they didn't, if it was all just on a lineup,
Dude,
like you just didn't know who was who. You
I remember
know?
being young enough to not know the difference between a guitar and a bass, and I would look and say,
Oh,
"That's a guitar
dude.
player." And I thought I was like 8, and I didn't really know what the difference was. That's
That
a
must have been
guitar.
a terrible, terrible time of confusion.
Well, I mean, I didn't know. I remember seeing my brother had a Van Halen poster on the wall, and I remember seeing Eddie Van Halen. I knew he was, and then I'm like, well, who's the other guitar player? There's another guitar player, and then like, oh, that's Michael Anthony. He plays bass. Like, oh, bass is different. Okay, I remember like learning that.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I thought it was all guitar. You know what I mean? It's weird, especially the way the Van Halen mixed their stuff too. It was like it wasn't like you could hear the bass like. Way
Oh
out,
yeah,
you know?
and then remember, trying to learn how to hear the bass guitar in
Yeah.
a track, like as a kid.
Yeah. Because
Like,
all you
just
heard
like-
was guitar,
because all I heard was guitar,
and drums,
right?
And the bass was just sort of this invisible, like glue that you couldn't really pen down. It was sort of like indefinable. You know what I mean?
Yeah, dude,
Yeah.
as like a 10, 11, 12-year-old kid, like knowing that a bass guitar existed, but then trying to listen for I remember distinctly maybe distinctly yet not sure exactly what period of time it was, listening to stuff going, okay, I'm just going to listen to the bass player this time. And being
I'm
more
going to
or
put on
less
"And Justice
successful.
for All" by Metallica. This is the greatest
Right.
experience ever.
I'm gonna put on the final Metallica album of all time and
Enjoy the
figure it out.
bass.
yes, enjoy all that unison bass. Yeah.
I don't know. I think that. But that being said, though, they had the goods. That's what I'm trying to say at the end of the day. And there's pop artists like the pop artist I think is actually pretty good is Shawn Mendes, but he's
Bruno Mars is good too.
Yeah, Bruno Mars is good. There's a few
Yeah.
artists like that who are good. I think that the singer-songwriter genre is pretty healthy right now. I think there's a lot of artists, who are really pushing that along just fine. It's really the more R&B hip hop thing.
Again, yep.
And pop princess thing that I think it's kind of like where it's more rife. But here's the thing that makes me so like feeling despair and horrible is that's easily the most downloaded and streamed. Well, downloaded, no one downloads it, but streamed stuff there is that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? And I just keep feeling like for the healthiness of our society, we need to actually value music and care about quality.
Yeah.
It can't become all McDonald's and Taco Bell. You know what I mean? It's,
Dude, there was a band a few years ago called The Struts.
yeah, they're still around.
Are they still around?
Yeah.
Man, music video, it was just these 4 like greasy dudes partying their asses off in Las Vegas. And I just thought, man, these guys might be able to make some parents scared. And just somebody.
But the sad
please
thing,
scare
this is,
some parents
I think
in
we
rock
have
and
to
roll.
we have to recognize though that the parents would probably be into like, yeah, dude, this kind of reminds me a little bit of AC/DC, a little bit of Stones.
No, I know, and that sucks.
It's gonna the parents will be the ones who are into it. They got to talk the kids into liking that. You know what I mean? Because wait, where's the bling? Where's the car with the chicks?
Man,
you know what I mean?
Somebody out there, please frighten some pinched up parents.
That I think is something that we're going to have to grow out of because I don't think that's going to ever happen again because we've
that
become.
sucks.
It's more about your Instagram and how many followers you have and how cool you look. It's not about. No one wants to rebel anymore. People want to rage to the way
Right.
that wage for the machine. Not against
and,
the machine.
and everybody just wants to conform to their own tribe.
Yeah, well, they also just want to just make themselves famous, or they see themselves as celebrities, that kind of thing. I think that's
Right.
part of it, and it's tough to rage against something like it's the same thing that we talked about before about like 25-year-olds not having driver's licenses or still living at home in their mid 30s. That kind of
Right.
thing. It's like why would
yep.
you go strike out on your own when things are so comfortable? This I just do this. This is more comfortable. I have a nice iPhone now. I've got my car. Don't have to pay rent. Mom does my laundry. That kind of thing. That wanting to strike out and have a piece of something that's your own is something that I think our generation, which
I
is, by the
don't-
way, the Gen Xers.
Well, dude, I don't know how else to put this, but man, like I had to move out of my parents' house because I was a walking boner.
I get you.
Right? I mean, without going into detail, like there was eventually like
Yep, I know what you mean.
there had to be a parting of the ways.
Yes, because you needed to get yourself to another better situation.
Right, because dude, sometimes the wind would blow.
Well,
and
that's your OnlyFans, right? The wind.
yeah, right. And man, I don't.
Ryan's he's a big follower of the OnlyFans from the Wind's OnlyFans page.
The wind, yeah. Maybe we all just need to start OnlyFans.
This one is
pages, but
Southwest.
who's
All right,
even-
so
yeah.
No, I'm with you. I moved out when I was like 18 or 19. I was like, right, not for that reason, but just more like I needed to have my own place.
I mean, dude,
I wanted to also strike out to have my own life. I moved from the town I grew up in to Los Angeles. I'm like, I'm going to go strike out and do my own thing. You know what I mean? That's what you have to do when you become an adult. You have to leave the nest.
I mean, there's got to be something. Yep. You know what I mean? Like, and it's not like I had a high-paying job. I was selling guitars.
Well,
for
you
a
figured
living,
it out. You know
and I figured it out.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was a teenager, and you know that's what motivated me when I was a teenager, because I was a teenager.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's still teenagers out there, but they don't seem to care about making contact.
I think that's partially
with
why
each
rock
other.
and roll is so like not the voice of this generation, is because that rebelliousness, that sort of I'm going to do my own thing, I'm going to strike out and do my own things my own way. Fuck the man.
It's more like I'm going to live at home with mom and dad and like soothe myself.
Exactly. I'll just stay here until they die, and I'll take their house. You know, that's basically the plan. You know what I mean? And I look at that and it's like, I had never thought that way at all. I think our entire generation didn't. The Gen Xers, even millennials, like I would say the younger, like half of the millennials probably didn't think that way. It's only the later millennials and like the Gen Zers who think that way.
Yeah, I mean, I know that, you know, I know that rents have skyrocketed, housing costs have skyrocketed.
Well, we live in California too, so we have, you know, comparatively, it's not as bad in other parts of the country, but I don't know. I think that partially is why rock and roll has dipped. I don't think that kind of do your own thing attitude is as much coveted as it once was. You know what I mean? When we were kids. Yeah, we're probably the first generation ever to look with scorn upon the next generation. I think this is the first time that's ever happened. I
don't look with scorn. I just look with like, man, it's like, you know the old saying, youth is wasted on the young?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, you should be out, dude, if you're 18, 19, go out and rage.
Yeah, that's not that they don't want to. That's not where they roll. They rage on TikTok. They rage on Switch. You know what I mean?
I know a lot of young people who are just too young to be that old.
I get you.
Like, go out and do stuff.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, okay, that's life advice, guys. That's our new recurring segment on the Rock Guitar Confidential Podcast. Advice for your life. With Ryan and Scott.
This is I think this is a spicy episode.
It is very spicy.
Got some spicy stuff.
Yeah, so sriracha, free sriracha with this episode.
The ghost pepper episode.
Thank you so much for joining us today on the Rock Guitar Confidential Podcast. Please make sure to rate, subscribe, and like this podcast. Also, please make sure to check out our band Ex Aegis at our website www.exaegisband.com. You can get links to our socials on that, as well as all of our Bandcamp and iTunes stores and Amazon stores and all that stuff.
And our OnlyFans.
And our OnlyFans for the wind.
For the wind.
Just for the wind.
Just for the wind.
Yep. What's that website again? Ryan?
That's www.exaegisband.com.
Good job. So go ahead and please check that out, and maybe pick up an album or two or three. Just something for the kids. Christmas is going to be here before we know it, right?
Physical copies are available. So
no matter what time of year it is, Christmas is going to be here soon. So
that's right. Even though Halloween's better.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening to. We'll catch you next time. Take it easy.
Peace.